Now, one of the most interesting aspects of video games, for me certainly anyway, is the many different varieties you can get from the same game. That could be from just simple ports to different systems, HD remasters or remakes, or the complete reimagining of a game giving you a completely different experience from all the same basic ingredients. Now of course, due to the Master System Challenge, I'm on a bit of a Shinobi kick at the moment, and I thought why not look at Shinobi through this very lens, and if you want to see that, it's coming right up, straight after these. Now, my first and most enduring memories of Shinobi was definitely back in the 80s and the arcades, and as a matter of fact I wouldn't revisit Shinobi again until 2022. But even then it wasn't Shinobi as we know it here, but that's something I'll get to a little bit later. If we're talking original Shinobi, we're talking 2023, and yes, I have recently released quite a few videos on this particular game, and it's all thanks to the Master System community, because after taking part in their wonderful Master System Challenge, which just happened to showcase Shinobi, this little Sega arcade game from the 1980s absolutely got its hooks into me, and I have been playing it almost constantly since then. Now, anyone who's watched the previous videos on the Master System Challenge itself will notice that I have improved ever so slightly when it comes to this game, and dare I say I'll eventually complete this game, and in probably quite a short timescale too. Now, that's not saying the game's easy, it's not easy by any stretch of the imagination. It is a 1980s arcade game after all, a game that was initially designed to guzzle as much of your pocket change as it could. It has enough challenge for even veteran gamers, but with a little perseverance and a whole lot of frustration, you will start to put together a mental map that will get you through each stage and onto each boss. Now, at the time of recording this, I can quite easily get to the Mandara boss level, which although still gives me a fair chunk of the game to go, does show the amount of progress that I've made over the space of a week. Gone are the early frustrations that I had with the scuba diving and the pixel perfect jumps, and I've even managed to overcome my fear of the hand grenade, but always thinking of the future, what's next for me when I actually finish Shinobi? Well, casting my mind back about a year ago, there was another Master System Challenge, and that particular game was AlexKidd in Shinobi World. And although I didn't put a great deal of time into that particular challenge either, it did leave me with some fond memories. So taking a break from the original Shinobi game, I decided to fire up AlexKidd in Shinobi World and give that another try. Of course, being part of the AlexKidd franchise, I was fairly certain that this game would be much easier than the original Shinobi game. It teases you in gently with the cartoon pixel art, and a little opening cutscene where your sister gets kidnapped by the big bad. But from here on in, it takes a much worse turn, and it's mainly due to the gameplay changes. Despite its cutesified art style, it does take away some of the more important features that you get in the original Shinobi game, and by that I mainly mean the power-ups that let you feel like you're playing some sort of power fantasy in the original game. Sure, the original game will strip away those powers at a moment's notice if you're not paying attention, but in AlexKidd in Shinobi World it barely gives you any at all. The first notable difference is that you don't have a projectile weapon. Well, not at the start anyway, so little AlexKidd is left to melee action only at the beginning. Now, there are a couple of interesting mechanics at the beginning of the game, such as climbing up lampposts. You're probably thinking to yourself, what's the big deal about climbing up lampposts? Well, if you do climb up a lamppost, you can spin round so fast you'll turn yourself into a fireball that can clear whole levels of enemies. But that brings me to my next niggle with the game, and that is the brutes that throw the scimitars. In the original Shinobi game, you had plenty of time to duck, peek back up, shoot the enemy and drop back down again. Not so much with AlexKidd, however. Here you have to time his throw, jump over his scimitar and then jump over him, and let me tell you, AlexKidd does not jump as well as the original Shinobi, meaning that he's got some of that classic early platforming momentum that will either take you too far or not enough. And on top of that, there's little to no control during the jump either. So these scimitar wielding brutes, you have to get close enough to use your melee weapon. And oh yes, before I forget, while they're holding a scimitar, they are invulnerable to all your attacks, and that even includes if you're standing behind them. Now, towards the end of the first level in AlexKidd in Shinobi World, you do get a projectile weapon, a kunai blade that you can throw to your heart's content. This, however, will only highlight the fact that the scimitar guys are still invulnerable to this from behind if they're holding their blades. On the plus side, however, you can use them to deflect enemy shuriken, and at least it gives you a ranged weapon for the first time in the game. It is, however, right at the end of the first stage, and when you move on to the second stage, you lose that weapon. Unlike the original Shinobi, where you carried on your power-ups, AlexKidd just seems to stupidly discard his new weapon before he goes into the next stage. The next stage is much more of a platform game than it is a Shinobi game, with Donkey Kong style ladders to climb and a whole variety of enemies to negotiate while you're trying to do that. Now bear in mind that I said the jumping skills of AlexKidd left a little bit to be desired. Well, you're going to notice that a lot when you get to this stage, because not only do you have the actual platforms to contend with, you have those scimitar throwing brutes, cunningly placed just where you don't need them, along with regular ninjas and of course those dreaded snipers. So quite quickly the thought of taking a break from the original Shinobi and playing something a little bit lighter but in the same vein totally evaporated, just like my powered up weapons at the beginning of the second stage. Now there's also a powered up weapon in this second stage, but it merely increases the power of your sword, so it still leaves you to melee attacks only. This game really could have used a projectile weapon. Convinced that continuing this game at the moment was only going to increase my frustration and not help relieve it, I decided to move on to the third and final of the Shinobi games that I could have played back in the day, and that is the original Shinobi game but on the ZX Spectrum. Now of all the Shinobi games that I have recently played, this one is the one that took me by surprise the most. Firstly, it's on the ZX Spectrum. Now if you don't know what the ZX Spectrum is, then it's a 8-bit microcomputer from the UK in the 80s. It's a little machine that was never designed to play games. It was designed by the wonderful Sir Clive Sinclair to put a computer into as many homes as possible, and the thought of his baby being used for video games was something that left quite a bad taste in Sir Clive's mouth. But of course, as humanity always does when we get a new piece of technology, we either turn it into a weapon or a way to have fun. And there was no way that the early coders of the 1980s were going to let a machine like the ZX Spectrum slip by without getting any games in. Well, it got plenty of games. And yes, that includes arcade ports as well. Now running on the 128K ZX Spectrum, it was no mean feat to get this game on. But as you can probably see here, it runs rather well indeed. The first thing that absolutely took me by surprise was the speed that the game ran at. The gameplay is nowhere near as slow and methodical as it is on the Master System, because on the ZX Spectrum for some reason they managed to get this game to play at warp 10. No more slow waiting between projectile throws, as you can hurl your shuriken as fast as you like, and the power of this first weapon can tear through the enemy like a knife through butter. Graphically, of course, it's not quite on par when it comes to the Master System, and that's mainly due to the fact that the machine wasn't made for gaming, so there aren't different layers for different levels of the graphics. Everything on the screen's running on one plane, so you will get a lot of colour clash where they don't use monochromatic tricks to hide this particular fact. The music is actually okay for the ZX Spectrum, but of course this is a 128K variant and not the beefy little 16K or 48K that we all started with. Now I'm not likely to persevere with Shinobi on the ZX Spectrum, and that's not because I'm not enjoying the game, because I am. It's fun, it's fast, it's exactly what you look for in a ninja game. It's just that the pacing and style of the game might just take me out of the mindset of the original Shinobi on the Master System, and that's the one I want to complete. So in a quick summary, which of these Shinobi games would I recommend that you play? Well, that would be completely down to what sort of game you're looking for. If you want to be ultra frustrated, then go for AlexKidd. If you want fast, high-paced arcade action, then try out the ZX Spectrum port, and I never thought I'd ever say that in my lifetime. But other than the original on the arcade cab, for me it would have to be the Master System port of Shinobi, as it has the best balanced gameplay, and without a doubt I'm finding it the most rewarding game to play. So there you go, my friends, that was 3 shades of Shinobi, and what did you think of each of those variants? You had obviously the classic ports to ZX Spectrum and the Master System itself, both of them running and looking completely different, and then we had the wild card in AlexKidd and Shinobi World, which plays completely differently but with the same elements. And not only the same elements, it's technically the same game when you look at it at a bare bones level. Now of course, if you want to talk about any of these 3 games that you've seen today, then drop that down into the comments, because the interaction between you and me, well, that's what makes YouTube special. It does for me anyway. If you want to see some more videos, well, I'll pop this up here, and that will be the pixel years, and you will get to see some of the older games that I used to play from the early 80s to the early 90s. And down there, if you're interested in following the collection as it grows, yes, there's beasts behind me, you can watch some of them there. Thank you very much for watching as always, and until next time, cheerio!